Malawi's Vice-President Saulos Chilima has been arrested on allegations that he accepted money in exchange for awarding government contracts. He's accused of receiving $280,000 and other items from a British businessman, Zuneth Sattar. Chilima has appeared in court, has not commented on the charges as yet. He'd already been stripped of his powers in June when he was first accused by the country's Anti-Corruption Bureau. He faces 6 charges relating to corruption. Meanwhile, Sattar, who's currently out on bail following his arrest in the UK last year, is accused of using connections with senior Malawi government officials and politicians to fraudulently obtain contracts to supply goods and services. Well, for some reaction, we're now joined by Malawi Human Rights Lawyer, Alexious Kamangira. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How historic is this? I believe this is the first time a sitting vice president has been arrested and charged for criminal offences.
Well, for corrupt practices, yes. But remember, during Bingu Wamtarika's regime, the President Kasim Chirumpa was arrested, and it was on allegations of treason. But I think this is something historical in the context that this is in relation to corruption. And the issues associated with Mr. Zuneth Sattar are issues that have been of interest, public interest to Malawi, but also I think global interest since last year when he was arrested in the UK for corruption that relates to a lot of huge numbers of officials within government. And I think later on last year we saw a list of 83 government officials in which now the vice president was mentioned. So it's really historical, but it's not the first time a vice president has been arrested for criminal charges.
Obviously, these charges will be tested in court, but from what's floating around, is there a connection between the vice president and this Zuneth Sattar character?
From what we're hearing and looking at what we have been informed by the Anti-Corruption Bureau in Malawi is that these charges are directly connected to Mr. Zuneth Sattar. As regards to the relationship between Mr. Zuneth Sattar and the Vice President, Right Honorable Dr. Saulos Chilima, I can confirm, and we don't have clear-cut information with regard to his relationship. But what is of suspicious is that almost all politicians, all political parties, seem to have been supported during their campaign by Zuneth Sattar, and it was for that reason, so that they can be caught to be under pressure to grant him the contracts. But I think of interest is the charges that the vice president of this country has been charged, which are 6 charges. 3 of them are corrupt practices by a public officer, 2 receiving advantage so that you can use it to influence in awarding contracts, and 1 in relation to failure to report to a police officer or anti-corruption bureau officers where an offense or an advantage has been received. So these are interesting charges, and we have been informed that this trial is going to be referred to the newly established Financial and Economic Crimes Court, which has just been instituted in Malawi. So it's going to be quite an interesting time in Malawi.
Mr. Chilima's backers are saying that this is political, that President Chakwera has been under pressure for some time to deal with corruption generally. We saw him dissolve his entire cabinet in January this year, I believe. Could there be political overhang in some of these decisions, or is the Corruption Bureau completely independent of the President's office?
Very interesting question. I would confirm here that there are really alarms to say that this might be a political prosecution. I'm not here to confirm or deny the same, but just to say that there have been a number of events happening in Malawi. Just recently, we have seen the former CEO of NOCMA. This is an institution that deals with fuel, and there's been alarming revelations with regard to corruption, how this former CEO was being pressured, apparently, by the SABC, who is sort of the first public servant. And so there's a number of pressure, and I mean, a lot of cabinet ministers have been mentioned or suspected to have committed some corrupt practices. But also, we're dealing with a scandal with regard to fertilizer subsidy, which is an exercise by the Minister of Agriculture that provides subsidized fertilizer to people. And there's been about 30 billion issues arising to misappropriation and also sort of failure to follow the procedures when it comes to procurement of those things. So to come up with the developments that are coming up now, it's not surprising that people would raise that. But I think that what is important and what every Malawian is interested is to see the trial, whether there will be evidence presented to the charges that have been put to the Right Honorable Dr. Saulos Chilima. And that's what would be interested. And I think as a human rights person, I'll be much interested also to comment on what happened today, whereby we saw the Vice President being charged today, actually being taken for interrogation today, and also taken to court on the same day and being granted bail on the same day. And I think everyone is looking forward to seeing this kind of practices, not only to people with power, not only to people with influence, but to each and every Malawian, whereby pre-trial detention should not be happening as it happens most of the times in Malawi.
Let's veer off a little bit and talk about human rights, because this has traditionally been an issue in Kenya. A number of administrations going all the way back to Banda's era. And the theory is this is a new order and a new time. Have you seen a shift and a change under the Chakwera administration?
It's a yes and no. There have been a number of developments. I'll be very honest. I think the president has done some development. His administration has done some developments. I would mention recently we have seen seditious laws being repealed. And I think this is very critical because all regimes were using very funny offenses to put people in prison. When people have just criticized the president, they would say all sorts of things and the police would arrest. So these are gone. We have seen the president also making an effort with his administration to ensure that there is a change in the law in terms of non-sexual or sexual offenses between consenting young or teenagers. So there is a number of developments, and we have seen also sort of engagement. I think one of the key issues is the president or this administration has been an open door whereby they can listen and you can engage with all sides of the coin. But what is shocking is that there has been more arrests by this administration. There have been funny arrests by any person that speaks in opposition to the government. But also we are seeing that there was an assenting to a non-governmental organization bill, which gives a lot of power to government to oppose, to put its authority on organizations or CSOs. And interestingly, there are developments to also adopt a terrorist anti-terrorist act. And that anti-terrorist act is very interesting because the definition of who a terrorist is very broad, and so it can be used in all sorts of things. So I would say that there have been progress, but also there's been retrospective of going backwards with regard to human rights positions. I would not be fair if I don't mention the issues that we have been facing in prison. We have seen prisoners not having food up to 5 days, even others not having water up to 5 days. So it's been a double sword.
All right. So there's no doubt that the courts will deal with these issues and these cases, these charges, and come to some decision. But whenever politicians get arrested and get hauled before courts, there is political consequences. So when you look at the totality of the people that have been arrested, that have been charged, police bosses being fired, the Tonze alliance that brought President Chakwera to power, does that look like it's almost all but collapsed?
I wouldn't say that. It would be too quick to say that because there are two sides to it. Some of these actions that the president is doing or his administration is doing might actually get him sympathizers, and especially globally, where people quickly interpret that there is a serious consideration to take out corruption. And I think the SCB director, in one of her statements with regard to her position, was that she wanted to focus on more recent corrupt activities and also to focus on the big guns, the big fish. And I think with that regard, if there's going to be consistency in arresting not only people of the other political parties, but overall everyone that is suspected to have committed a corrupt practice, and as well as there's evidence against them being arrested, they need to move us forward. But what is problematic now and what might be very damning to the government and I think to Malawians, the poor Malawians, is the fact that there's some of these arrests, if there is no progress, there will be even more costly to the country. If there's no a conclusion to it, they might of any help. So we're looking forward to the next 2-3 weeks and I think the next month. If I was to comment as a politician or a political analyst, which I'm not, I would say that it's interesting or positive to the right vice president for being arrested in 2022, not too close to the election. So there is time within which the courts now can exonerate him or can convict him. And that, I think, it gives a good time for this to happen. But what would be important is for the Anti-Corruption Bureau to sort of show its sort of independence in terms of arresting each and everyone and not people of the other political side.
Alexious, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for giving us some analysis and sharing your thoughts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's Malawian Human Rights Lawyer Alexious Kamangira giving us an update. Historic times in Malawi. The Vice President has been charged with corruption. Apparently, a Malawian British businessman named Sattar paid 84 people and in return got contracts of $2.4 billion for the next 5 years. So, a vice president is in the dock and several senior government officials. That's a story we'll definitely be following for you.